I always get very confused about this question because I have sort of so many. I grew up in Kent, in what was a small village at that time called Edenbridge, and we lived sort of on the edge of the village, and behind our house there were the fields, I thought, went on forever. This was before I began to understand maps, and that was really my playground, and I used to jump over the fence at the back and rush around. Well, I had this butterfly net, which was actually bigger than I was. And I used to dash about trying to catch small heaths and pearl-bordered fritillaries and holly blues. And really, I think it was there that we have one thing in common today, don't we? And that is we all have a deep-rooted concern for the countryside. But where did that come from? Where did our love and our understanding and our respect for the great beauty and the wonder that we see, where did that come from? I would imagine that all of us have a cradle. We were cradled somewhere at some point in our lives where we were able to recognize and understand and feel a great sense of belonging, both emotionally, I think, and practically, but also spiritually. I think somewhere for all of us, at some point, the countryside and what we have seen and what we have heard, and what we have understood, has struck a great chord with all of us, which is why we're here today to celebrate the wonderful work of the Countryside Restoration Trust. So in answer to your question, Hugh, I mean, I'm deeply concerned about what I continue to see as the plight of the countryside. I'm deeply concerned that we should at all times endeavour to do our best not to protect it as a mausoleum or a zoo, but to add to it, to add to its well-being for every butterfly, so that we can again, as Robin was saying, hear the nightingales, and we can see the lesser spotted and the greater spotted woodpeckers flying in our woods. These are critical things because they mirror our well-being, along with the water meadows and the great beauty of the streams. So I am deeply concerned for all of it, and I'm deeply concerned that our young people should be able to understand and bond in some way, rather than recognizing it simply as part of their television, but they should actually be able to interact with and form a relationship with, a deep relationship with the world around them. And this is something that we must encourage all our young people to do.
Thank you. Peter, David, similar to you really, where are you coming from in your concern for the countryside?
Well, Hugh, can I say what a privilege it is to be here and part of this marvellous celebration? My concerns are twofold. Firstly, like all of us here, I'm concerned with what's been happening to the countryside. I'm a geographer, I'm a Christian, I teach young people who are going out into the world to all sorts of careers. My concern is with what's been happening to the countryside, the damage that's been done by industrialised agriculture, the loss of bird life, of wildflowers. And that's why, as a fellow of St Catherine's College, Cambridge, I was so delighted when earlier this year the opportunity arose for my college to sell land to the Countryside Restoration Trust. So part of the land that hopefully all of you have been seeing, the new land, was owned by my college, St Catherine's. And it was given us in 1473 by our founder, Robert Woodluck, and it's been in the college's ownership ever since then. So we are delighted that it is now in the hands of the Countryside Restoration Trust to be used in what hopefully will be a much better, environmentally positive way. So that's my first point. The second concern is in relation to my work with the Rural Development Commission. And many of you will know what that is. It's a government agency set up in 1900 to help rural communities in terms of their economic and social well-being, communities that were declining because of agricultural job losses, because of depopulation. And the Rural Development Commission is concerned with helping rural communities socially and economically. And I'm on the Economic Advisory Committee of the Rural Development Commission nationally, and I'm on the Cambridgeshire Committee. So our concern is for rural life, for the people who are absolutely vital for the countryside, the people who live and work in the countryside. Affordable housing for young people, transport, problems of isolation, jobs, of course, where jobs are a real problem with agricultural employment decline, Issues of that kind, the concern of the Rural Development Commission, we are currently being amalgamated with the Countryside Commission. So there will be one rural agency from next April. So there are big changes going on. But it's important that not only is the environment of the countryside enhanced as through the work of the CRT, but also that the people who live in the countryside are, in a sense, helped adjust change in ways that the RDC, like the Rural Development Commission, tries to do. And that's my second concern.
Can I follow that up and say, do you see the RDC and the CRT as being in competition, or are they supporting each other? Do you feel?
Absolutely, they cannot be. I mean, I think the changes that the CRT are introducing are very much to do with the agricultural side, with enhancing the actual whole quality of life of the countryside. Now that's important for living communities, that the quality of the environment in which people live and work in the countryside is improved, enhanced, it's not prairie farming. And that will, I think, help the economic side of the countryside. People wanting to live there, young people wishing to stay. There are some conflicts over countryside development, obviously. Affordable housing is a very important issue, and that's a very big problem. But I don't see that there being a fundamental conflict.
Yeah. So can I ask one more supplement, David, then I'll come back to Peter, and I'll follow up a particular interest that I know he has, and that is, does the Rural Development Commission actually attempt to manage, control speculative development in any way? Does it have a role there?
It doesn't. That's the role, obviously, of local planners in local councils. That is their concern. What we in the RDC are concerned with is that local communities should have the appropriate jobs that they need, for young people especially, and that local people should have affordable housing, that they should have village shops and services, so that village communities can operate as communities. That's the mix of concerns that we have. And I think that's entirely in parallel with enhancing and restoring the natural environment of the countryside.
Okay, thanks. Peter, a thing that's become topical in the last few days, which you've had concern for a long time, I'd like you to tell us about, and that is your concern over the development of woodland burials, burial sites, particularly from your perspective as a parson and the church. Could you say something about that?
Yes, thank you, Hugh. Over the last sort of 2 to 3 years, there's been a small group of us in the diocese, in the Ely diocese, that have been looking at the possibility. Well, we've really been asking ourselves the question: is a woodland burial Christian? I think we all knew the answer when we first asked ourselves, and we've come to the resounding conclusion that yes, it is. It is also other things, but it is also Christian, and Christianity should not in any way be excluded from it. Far from that, it should actually be encouraging it, I believe. You see, when we die, we'll probably have, well, hopefully by then we'll have a few more choices, but at the moment we can either be cremated, and there are some serious problems with crematoriums in terms of their emissions. We burn quite well, I have to say, especially those of us who've smoked. But there are a lot of dioxins that are actually coming out of the roof, out of the chimneys of crematoriums, similar to the dioxins that are sadly coming out of the chimneys of the Rugby cement works over the hill. And so we can either be cremated or we can be buried in the churchyard and have a gravestone with our name and our favourite poem written on it above where we lie. But in a sense, there's a slight problem with the gravestones because they tend to come from either Scandinavia or India, or in some cases South Africa, and if you're exceedingly wealthy you can buy Italian marble. And so really we were saying, look, the environmental movement as it stands has been doing some quite wonderful things.